Hey guys, on this week's episode I'm going to be teaching you the basics of brisket trimming. That's right, today we're going to be doing a basic trim up for a backyard brisket. We've got a prime brisket. Stick around. So like I said guys, today I'm going to be going over how to trim up a prime brisket. This is going to be a basic introduction to how to trim up a brisket so that you can smoke an amazing brisket in your backyard for your friends and your family. Let's go ahead and get started. I always take it from the fat side to make my initial cut. Get a nice sharp knife. Make sure this brisket is refrigerator cold. Trimming a warm or room temperature brisket is always harder, and so you want to make sure it's at least refrigerator cold, never frozen. Open up the package, and I like to pull it up loose like that because I like to leave all of those juices in the package if I can. And then I leave this bag on a tray so I can throw all my trimmings in it, okay? So, the first thing we're gonna do is we're just gonna look over this brisket. We're gonna try to get a game plan. Let's look at it and see what's going on here. So, this is a lot of soft fat. Most of this fat will render down. And let's flip it over. And we see, man, this butcher really didn't do me any favors. They really cut this up. That's okay. This right here is the decal. That's hard fat. So I know I'm going to immediately take that off, and that decal separates your flat from your point. This is the moist side, this is the lean side. So immediately I know I'm going to chop that off. This is real loose right here, so I know I'm going to chop that off, and then I'll get rid of some of this fat up top here. Alright, so let's get started. Make sure you got a nice sharp knife for this. First I'm going to take my sharp knife and I'm going to start cutting away at this decal. Now I apologize for the flies, but we're cooking outside and we do all we can to keep them away, but you know, cooking outside has its pros and its cons. We're not going to keep any of that. That's not good for anything. It's hard fat. It won't render down. I keep cutting that out right there. Now I could follow that fat all the way through and separate the end and the point, but I don't personally like doing that, especially not for backyard cooks. Okay, so see, this is loose, so it's gonna burn. So not only am I gonna cut it off because it's gonna burn, but makes it a little bit more aerodynamic. So the goal for any cook is to make the smoke and air pass over it evenly so that your ends are all cooked nice and evenly. So you see a little bit of discoloring there. I'm going to take that discoloring off. That just happens in the packaging process, alright? Let me flip this around so that you can see it. We have some more of that hard decal fat that's not going to render down. So we're just going to make an incision down. We're not going to cut into, we're going to try to not to cut in as much meat as possible. Alright. We got that nasty fat off of there. And again, I see some loose pieces that are going to burn because they're small. Okay. Alright, so on this particular brisket, there's some loose ends right here. Thanks to the butcher. Mr. Butcher, you didn't do me any favors here, alright? You couldn't see that what was in the package, but it is what it is. So I'm going to take my sharp knife and I'm just going to take those off. See, those would have burnt very quickly. Alright, so I see this is loose and it's fatty, so I'm going to go ahead and take that off. In a competition style brisket, we take all this fat off completely and all this silver skin. You see some silver skin here. There's silver skin right here, regular here. So we'll do that at another time. But for this one, I'm just going to take some of this off the top. Okay. So the easiest way to do that, put your hand up underneath it and push up. Have a sharp knife. and just start cutting that fat off. See how I'm not getting any, if I am getting any meat, it's very, very little. It's not changing the shape of anything, it's just getting that top layer of fat off. Again, not going to get extremely picky for a backyard. My family's going to enjoy this brisket, and so it's not for a turn-in box, right? Having an extremely sharp knife is not only safer, but it gives you a much easier time and better product while doing this. See how that's all loose, stands up? So we're just going to take that off. The more you can do this in long strokes, the better. This corner here, I'm going to go ahead and take completely off, and as I'll turn it around, I'll show you why. See that big old chunk of fat? Take some of this off here. Again, I'm not getting down to the gray skin and doing all the tedious work of that. I'm just getting some of this fat off the top. The reason I'm doing that is the bark will come off, the seasoning, the rub won't get in, penetrate that meat as well as it could. Alright, so we flip it around here. See all that discoloring and all that fat? Just chop it off, man. Just chop it off. It's mostly fat from the fat side. Okay. So for a backyard trim, that's all I'm going to do on this side. It's fairly fat-free. There's a couple of spots right there that I'll try to get just off the top. But for a backyard, that's about all I'll do. I can't do anything about that. Can't do anything about some of these gouges from the butcher. So let's go ahead and flip it to the fat side. Now, our goal on this side is to get this down to what I like to do on the ugly drum smoker is between 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch of fat. So you can see that there's quite a bit of fat here. That's actually separation fat, but this is really fatty along the top here. So let me spin this around so you can see it a little bit better. You see that huge glob of fat there? I'm so glad I bought all of this fat. But the good thing about this soft fat is this will render down. So you can save this for sausage. You can save this, it's deer season, so you can save this to have mixed in with your deer. See, I got a little bit deep there, I know by the grain that that's the moist side of the meat, so I'm still safe. It's a little windy here today. It's West Texas. It's always blowing wind. That tells me that the fat was thicker right here than it was anywhere else, because I can see somewhat through it down here. And that's a good thickness here. And really, it's translucent here. So now all I want to do is cut some of this loose stuff off, because like I said, it's gonna burn. The reason we do leave fat on this side is because that age-old question that's always asked, which side do you put your meat? The fat does not render down and moisten your brisket. It does not. The fat protects your meat from the heat. So in an ugly drum smoker, the heat comes from the bottom, you put the fat down. And say a Weber kettle, the heat comes around, so you put the fat up. And depending on your offset will depend on where your hot spots are and how your heat travels. So at this point, we've got a decent looking brisket. This brisket could be scored. You don't want to score too deeply, but I don't like to do that. For my backyard, this is exactly how I like to trim up a brisket. It's pretty aerodynamic. It's got a little bit of a hump here. We may trim that down just a little bit, but other than that, this is ready to be rubbed and thrown on a smoker so that you can impress your friends and family with an awesome brisket. Guys, I hope you learned something amazing. Thanks for coming by, and drink more water.